I never thought I'd be the one holding my sister's wedding hostage with a text message, but here I am, 3 steps from the altar, my graduation gown still clinging to my back like a second skin, and every single guest in this Viny ARD is watching me like I've just pulled a gun. The text from Ryan, my soon-to-be brother-in-law, had burned through my phone 30 seconds ago, and I'm still trying to process the words. Asterisk. She's been funneling your trust fund into MARK's account since last spring. I have receipts. Look at your phone right now. Asterisk. Claire's laugh is brittle across the altar, her champagne flute wobbling in her grip. Elena, stop being dramatic. Put the phone down and sit with the other guests, or I swear to God, I'll have you removed. You'll have me removed. I don't recognize my own voice. It's too steady, too cold, like someone else's vocal cords have taken over my throat. Or you'll have your fiancé remove me, the one who just sent me proof that you've been stealing from our family fund to pay for your ex-boyfriend's gambling debts. The champagne flute hits the ground. Shatters. Crystal sprays across the white petal-strewn aisle, and my mother gasps like she's the one who's been shot. Elena, what are you saying? Mom's hand flies to her chest, clutching the PRL necklace Claire bought her last birthday. Claire, sweet-art, what is she talking about? Claire's face cycles through 5 shades of panic in 2 seconds. She grabs Ryan's arm, Ryan, who's standing there with his phone still in his hand, his jaw tight enough to crack granite, his eyes fixed on me with something that looks terrifyingly like gratitude. She's lying, Claire spits. She's always been jealous. I'm the older sister, I got my ride first. She's still renting that shoebox apartment and pretending she's a real doctor, pretending. I laugh, and it comes out hollow and sharp. I graduated top of my class yesterday. You chose to have your wedding on that day, Claire. Not by accident. You told Mom and Dad you'd booked the venue months ago, but I checked. You rebooked it after I sent out my graduation invitations. You did this on purpose. What does a graduation date have to do with the trust fund? My father steps forward, finally, his voice low and refill like he's defusing a bomb. Elena, sweet-art, let's all just breathe. Dad, she's been bleeding the fund dry since Mom and Grandma set it up for both of us, I say, and my voice cracks on the word both. It was supposed to pay for our education, our weddings, our first homes. But Claire took her half and then she took mine. And when I confronted her 3 months ago, she told me I was too obsessed with money and that she'd pay me back when her rich husband's mother died. Ryan flinches. His mother is alive. His mother is sitting in the 3rd row with her mouth hanging open. Claire. Ryan's voice is a whisper, but the entire Viny ARD hears it because the silence has swallowed everything else. You told me your mother-in-law died 5 years ago. You told me you were an orphan on your mother's side. Claire's mouth opens, closes, opens again. For the first time in my life, my sister has no words. I hold up my phone, screen facing the crowd. She also told MARK that if I ever tried to expose her, she'd destroy my career. She's been collecting screenshots of my medical school records, patient names, treatment notes, even a biopsy SCA I had in year 2. She planned to report me for unprofessional conduct before I even got my license. The courtier RD erupts. Cousins are shouting, aunts are crying, and my grandmother, the one who set up the trust fund with her own inheritance, rises from her chair and points a trembling finger at Claire. You swore to me, Grandma says, her voice cracking with a century of disappointment, that you would take care of your sister. You swore on your father's grave. Dad's not in a grave, Grandma. Claire snaps, hysterical now. He's standing right there. And he's never done anything to protect me from you people. My father goes white. I'm shaking. My legs are about to give out, but I can't sit down because if I sit down, I'll disappear. I'll become the quiet one again, the one who takes the smaller room, the older car, the cold leftovers. I've swallowed that silence for 26 years, and I've never thrown up. Until today. Let me see the phone, Mom demands, stepping between me and Claire. If you're going to accuse your sister of theft, I want to see the proof. Mom, no, Claire starts, but I've already extended my phone across the aisle. Mom takes it. Scrolls. Her face cycles through confusion, shock, disbelief, and then something that looks heartbreakingly like recognition. That these are bank statements, she says slowly. From our account. The one Grandma and I set up when you were both born. Claire, these transfers, these dates, these are for 40, 50, $100,000 RS at a time. Don't look at me like that, Claire hisses. You gave me access when I turned 18. It was my money too. Your money was half of it. Grandma's voice cuts through like a scythe. Half. You took all of it, Claire. All of it. And then you lied to everyone, including that nice young man you're supposed to RRY, about where it came from. He's not a nice young man. Claire shrieks. He's a bore. He talks about property lines and interest rates and his mother's golf handicap. I was going to leave him after a take the rest of the trust, and start over somewhere that actually has culture. Ryan's laugh is hollow and broken, like someone cracking open a coffin. You were going to leave me. After you drained the fund. Don't act so wounded, Claire spits. You were going to trade me in for a younger model once your mother died anyway. I saw your texts to your ex, the one you swore you'd blocked. There's a collective intake of breath. I look at Ryan, and for a moment, his composure shatters. He looks like a man who just found a rattlesnake in his jacket pocket. Those texts were taken out of context, he says. She reached out to me about the house sale. Don't, I cut in. Right now, I don't see a about your texts. I see a about the trust. I see a about the fact that my sister used my graduation, 8 years of medical school, Claire, 8 years, to plan the biggest heist in our family's history. And I see a about the fact that the only reason I'm here and not at my own celebration is because I wanted one day. Just one day where I was the priority. And you couldn't even give me that. Claire's mascara has SMEA red to her cheekbones. She's ugly crying now, the kind of crying that ruins bouquets and photo filters. You don't get to be the victim, Elena. You've always been the favorite. Even when you weren't trying, Mom and Dad looked at you like you hung the moon. Because I didn't steal from them. I'm yelling now, and I don't see who he is. I didn't cash out their savings to pay for a wedding dress that costs more than a used car. I didn't promise Grandma I'd take of her legacy and then gamble it away on Mark's failed business ventures. Grandma's cane hits the ground so hard it cracks the flagstone. Enough, she says, and everyone freezes. I am still the matriarch of this family, and while I am alive, no one, not even my favorite granddaughter, speaks to another family member in this manner. She's looking at Claire. And Claire knows it. But you, Claire starts. I said enough. Grandma turns to me. Elena, you will bring me the full financial records before the week is out. Claire, you will sit down and you will not speak another word until I tell you. Ryan, I don't know if you knew about this, but if you did, you're just as guilty as she is. Ryan shakes his head, and he's crying now too. I didn't know. I swear on my mother's life, I didn't know. Then you'll have to prove it. Grandma's voice is steel wrapped in silk. And Claire, if the numbers match what Elena says they match, I will have no choice but to take this to the police. Claire's shriek is the stuff of horror movies. She lunges at me, her manicured nails aiming for my face, and I step to the side at the last second. She misses, stumbles, sprawls across the aisle in her $50,000 dress, and my mother makes a noise that might be a scream or a sob. The guests are silent. The cameras are still rolling. Someone's videographer didn't think to stop. My father is frozen, his hand over his mouth, his eyes wide with something that looks like terror. I look down at my sister, crumpled on the rose petals with her expensive lace torn, her hair half out of its updo, her chest heaving with ugly, desperate sobs. Is it worth it? I ask quietly. Was it all worth it? She doesn't answer. She can't. Ryan's phone buzzes on the altar table, and he picks it up without thinking. His face goes pale. He reads it once, twice, and then he turns to me with an expression that stops my heart. "That was my lawyer," he says. "He just found something else. Something about Claire and Mark, something that involves you, Elena." "What?" My voice is really a whisper. Ryan holds up his phone. "They've been accessing your patient records from the hospital where you did your rotation. Not just your medical records, your patient's records. They know the names of your cases. They know the details of a malpractice lawsuit that was filed against your attending physician. And they've been preparing a letter to the medical Boa Road." The world tilts. My vision blurs. They were going to frame me. For something I didn't do. Ryan nods. They were going to make it look like you had full responsibility. And then they were going to file a complaint that would get your license suspended before it was even processed. Claire's sobs turn into something wailing and inhuman. My mother drops my phone. My father steps back like he's been punched in the gut. And Grandma looks at Claire one last time, and then she turns her back. "Get her out of this house," Grandma says to no one in particular, "and if anyone tries to defend her, they can leave too." The courtyard erupts into chaos. But I'm standing still, so still, while the world crumbles around me. Because this isn't just about money anymore. This is about my career, my future, the entire life I worked 8 years to build. And Claire never planned to leave me any of it. Ryan's lawyer sent the full document at 7:43 p.m. I read it on my phone in the parking lot of the Vineyard, my back pressed against my car door, the last of the sunset bleeding orange across the hills. Claire was still inside, screaming at my mother. My father had walked out 10 minutes ago and hadn't come back. Grandma was on the phone with her estate attorney. I should have gone home. I should have showered, eaten something, slept for 12 hours. But I couldn't move my feet. They were glued to the gravel, and my thumb kept scrolling through the PDF like I was looking for a version where this wasn't real. The document was a chain of emails. Claire's work email, Mark's personal Gmail, and a third address I didn't recognize, someone named Patricia, who worked in the medical records department at St. Anne's Hospital. Patricia had been writing patient files to Claire since January. Not just my files. Files from my attending physician, Dr. Harmon. Cases where we'd had complications. Cases where the outcome wasn't perfect. Claire had been building a folder of every single imperfect moment in my training. And she'd annotated each one with notes like, asterisk, this one shows lack of judgment. Asterisk, here she delayed treatment by 12 hours. Asterisk, patient family was unhappy, could be leveraged. Asterisk, I wanted to throw up. I leaned over and dry heaved into the gravel, my hands shaking so hard I almost dropped the phone. When I straightened up, Ryan was standing 10 feet away, his tie undone, his shirt untucked, his face a wreck of exhaustion and guilt. "I didn't know about the hospital stuff," he said. "I swear to you, Elena. I found out when the lawyer sent that email. I had no idea she was capable of this. Your fiancé was going to destroy my career." My voice came out raw, scraped clean of any politeness. "She was going to make sure I never practiced medicine. And you're telling me you didn't know?" "I'm telling you I was stupid enough to believe her when she said she loved me." He walked closer, stopped at the edge of my parking space. "I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm asking if you want to see what else the lawyer found. Because there's more." "More?" I laughed, but it was hollow, broken. "What else could there possibly be?" Ryan pulled out his own phone and opened an attachment. Patricia wasn't just writing files. She was also helping Claire alter some of them. Small changes, dates, dosages, timestamps. Nothing that would hold up under a real forensic audit, but enough to make it look like you were negligent in a few key cases. My knees buckled. I caught myself on the car door, metal biting into my palm. She falsified medical records. She committed fraud. She did all of it, Ryan said quietly. And she would have gotten away with it if you hadn't shown up at that altar. ISTA read at him. The wind picked up, rustling the viney ard leaves, ring the faint sound of Claire's sobs from the courtier road somewhere inside. My mother was still trying to fix everything with soft words and gentle touches. My father was probably in his car ring at the dashboard, wondering how he'd raised a daughter capable of this. And me, I was standing in a gravel lot with my sister's ex-fiancé, holding proof that my own blood had tried to bury me. What do? I asked. I didn't mean to say it out loud. It just came out. Ryan put his phone away. The lawyer says you have two options. 1, you go to the police with everything. Claire goes to jail. Patricia loses her job and her license. And your name gets dragged through every local news outlet in the state. Option 2, you don't go to the police. You use the evidence to negotiate. Claire signs over all remaining trust assets to you. She issues a written confession that stays sealed unless she violates the agreement. Patricia gets fired quietly and signs an NDA. And you walk away without a public scandal. I closed my eyes. The wind was cold now, cutting through my graduation gown like it wasn't even there. What do you think I should do? Ryan was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, I think you deserve to walk away clean. But I also think she deserves to face what she did. That's not an answer. It's the only honest one I have. I opened my eyes and looked at him. He looked wrecked, hollowed out by the same betrayal that had hollowed me out. But there was something else in his eyes too, something that looked like respect. I need to talk to her, I said. Alone. Ryan nodded and stepped aside. I walked back the courtier, my heels crunching on the scattered rose petals. Claire was on a bench near the gazebo, her dress bunched around her face a ruin of SMEA red makeup and dried TRS. My mother was kneeling beside her, rubbing her back. When she saw me approach, she stood up. Elena, I think we should all take a breather. Mom, leave. My voice wasn't loud, but it was final. I need to talk to my sister. Alone. My mother hesitated. She looked at Claire, then at me, then at the shattered champagne glass still glittering on the aisle. She opened her mouth, closed it, and walked away. Claire didn't look up when I sat down beside her. She just read at her lap, her hands twisted in the ruined lace of her dress. Did you know Mark was gambling again? I asked as she flinched. Did you know he'd lost your APA deposit, the one you saved up for when you moved out of mom and dad's? Her shoulders roots shaking. Claire. Answer me. It wasn't supposed to be like this. Her voice was tiny, fragile, nothing like the woman who'd thrown champagne flutes and screamed at my mother. He said he was clean. He said he'd changed. I gave him money to help him start over, and he just kept losing it. I couldn't stop. If I stopped, he'd tell mom and dad about the trust. About what I'd done. You could have told them yourself. Before it got this bad. I couldn't. She finally looked up, and her eyes were red and swollen, but there was something raw in them. Not fake. Not performative. Just broken. I was so red, Elena. I was red they'd love you more. I was red they'd see that you were better than me in every way that actually mattered. So I just kept digging. And every time I dug, I went deeper. And I couldn't stop. I watched her cry. For a long time, I just watched. Then I said, I'm not going to the police. She went still. What? Not tonight. Not yet. You're going to sign over everything in the trust to me. You're going to write a confession and keep it sealed. You're going to tell Patricia to resign and never speak about this again. And you're going to leave me alone. For good. Claire read at me like I'd grown a second head. Why would you do that after everything I did? Because I don't want to be the person who destroys her sister, I said. I don't want to be the one who drags our whole family through a scandal. And I don't want to spend the next 5 years in court fighting you. I want to be a doctor. I want to help people. And I can't do that if I'm stuck in a war with you. She root crying again, but softer this time. I don't deserve this. No, you don't, I agreed. But I'm not doing it for you. I'm doing it for me. So I can close this chapter and never look back. I stood up. Claire grabbed my wrist. Dr. Elena. I'm sorry. I know that doesn't mean anything, but I'm sorry. I looked down at her hand on my wrist. Her fingers were trembling. Get a therapist, Claire, I said, pulling away. And if I ever find out you've done something like this to anyone else, I will burn every bridge you have left. I walked away without looking back. I drove home with the windows down and the cold air slapping my face, but I still couldn't feel anything. My hands were numb on the steering wheel. My chest was hollow. I just walked away from my sister's ruin, and instead of relief, I felt like I'd swallowed a handful of gravel. My apartment was exactly as I'd left it, textbooks stacked on the floor, coffee mugs growing, things I didn't want to identify, my graduation cap still sitting on the kitchen counter like a weird little monument. I kicked off my heels, peeled off the gown, and stood in front of the bathroom mirror for a long time. The woman staring back at me looked like a stranger. She had the RK circles under her eyes, a thin mouth, and the kind of exhaustion that went all the way down to her bones. But she also had something else. Something that hadn't been there this morning. She looked like she'd survived something. I splashed cold water on my face and changed into sweatpants and an old t-shirt. I was about to crawl into bed when my phone buzzed. Ryan. Can I come over? I don't want to be alone tonight. ISTA read at the screen for a full minute. My thumb hovered over the keyboard. A road part of me wanted to say no. He was still the man who'd almost married my sister, the man who'd been 3 steps away from signing a marriage certificate with the woman who tried to destroy me. But another part of me remembered the look on his face when he read those emails. The way his voice cracked when he told me about the falsified records. Yeah. I'll leave the door unlocked. He showed up 20 minutes later with 2 cups of coffee and a paper bag that smelled like donuts. He was still in his rumpled suit, his tie stuffed in his pocket, his hair sticking up like he'd been running his hands through it for hours. I didn't know if you'd eaten, he said, setting the bag on my kitchen counter. I figured you probably hadn't. I looked at the donuts. Glazed, powdered, chocolate frosted. A whole dozen. You bought a dozen donuts for 2 people. I didn't know what you liked. He shrugged, and for the first time all day, I almost smiled. We sat on my floor, backs against the couch, eating donuts in silence. The coffee was too hot and too bitter, but I drank it anyway because it was something to do with my hands. She called me, Ryan said after a while. Claire. While I was driving over. I stopped chewing. What did she say? She asked if I'd come back. If we could still get married. She said she'd fix everything, that she'd go to therapy, that she'd pay back the money. And what did you say? Ryan set down his coffee. I told her no. And I told her if she ever called me again, I'd file a restraining order. I didn't say anything. I just looked at him, and he looked back, and in that moment, there was nothing between us except red wreckage and tired eyes. She really loved you, you know, I said quietly. In her own broken way. Ryan shook his head. That wasn't love. That was possession. She wanted to own me, the way she wanted to own the trust fund and the house and everything else she could get her hands on. I was just another asset. I thought about that for a second. About Claire and Mark and the emails and the forged records. About the way she'd looked at me on the altar, fear and hatred and something that might have been grief all mixed together. She was always like that, I said. Even when we were kids. If I got a better grade, she'd find a way to make Mom and Dad focus on her instead. If I made the soccer team, she'd pretend to be sick so they'd stay home with her. She couldn't stand anyone else being in the spotlight. Not even for 5 minutes. Ryan turned his coffee cup in his hands. How did you survive that? I laughed, but it wasn't funny. I didn't. I just got really good at being invisible. I took the smaller room. I gave up the nicer things. I never fought back because fighting back meant more attention, and more attention meant more of her fury. And now, I looked at my hands. They were still trembling, just slightly, like the aftermath of a long fall. Now I don't have to be invisible anymore. She can't hurt me. Not really. The trust is gone, but I never counted on that money anyway. I built my own life. I made my own career. And if she tries anything with those fake records, I have proof. She can't touch me. Ryan leaned his head back against the couch and closed his eyes. You're stronger than me. I would have gone to the police. I would have made her pay. That's not strength, I said. That's anger. I'm not angry anymore. I'm just tired. We sat in silence for a long time. The city hummed outside my window, distant sirens, a neighbor's television, the low drone of a late-night bus. It felt like the world was still turning, even though my world had just stopped at "You should sleep," Ryan said finally. You look like you haven't slept in a week. I haven't. Not really. He stood up and held out his hand. I took it, and he pulled me to my feet. For a second, we were close enough that I could smell the coffee on his breath, see the faint stubble on his jaw, feel the warmth of his hand still wrapped around mine. Thank you, I said. For telling me. For not covering it up. He shook his head. I didn't do it for you. I did it because I couldn't live with myself if I let her get away with it. That's still the same thing. He smiled, small, tired, but real. Maybe. He left after that. I locked the door, crawled into bed, and read at the ceiling until the gray light of dawn root creeping through the blinds. I didn't sleep. But I stopped shaking. The next morning, I woke up to a knock on my door. I dragged myself out of bed, still in my sweatpants, and opened it to find my mother standing in the hallway. She was dressed like she'd come from a funeral, all black, her hair pulled back so tight it stretched her temples. Can I come in? She asked. That I stepped aside. She walked to my kitchen table and sat down. No casserole this time. No RCD speeches. Just her and me and the heavy silence. I called the lawyer, she said. The estate lawyer. He's drafting the paperwork for Claire to sign over her share of the trust. Grandma made the call. I wanted to tell you in person. I nodded, leaning against the counter. Okay. Elena, I need you to understand something. She looked up at me, and her eyes were red. She'd been crying. I didn't know. I swear to you, I didn't know any of it. The money, the medical records, the plan to ruin you. I didn't know. I looked at her. For so many years, I'd thought my mother was complicit in everything Claire did. That she favored her because she liked her better. That she'd chosen her side every single time. But standing there, watching her cry, I realized something: that she wasn't Claire's ally. She was Claire's victim too. Mom, I said, I believe you. She broke. She buried her face in her hands and sobbed, her shoulders shaking, her breath hitching. I walked over and put my hand on her back. I'm sorry, she said through the crying. I'm sorry I wasn't there for you. I'm sorry I didn't see it. I'm sorry I let her overshadow you for all those years. I thought if I gave her enough attention, she'd be okay. I thought if I made her feel special, she'd stop needing so much. But it only made it worse. I know, I said softly. I know you did your best. It wasn't good enough. No, I agreed. It wasn't. But I don't blame you anymore. She looked up at me, her face wet and raw. You don't, I shook my head. You made mistakes. So did Dad. So did Claire. But I'm done being angry about it. I'm done being the one who rise all that weight. My mother stood up and pulled me into a hug. It was awkward and stiff at first, like we were learning how to hold each other again. But then she relaxed, and I relaxed, and for the first time in years, it felt like real. I'm going to be better, she whispered. I promise. I'm going to be better for you. I hugged her back. That's all I ask. She left an hour later, after I made her tea, and we talked about small things, my residency application, her GA or den, the cat she'd been thinking about adopting. It was strange and fragile and nothing like our old conversations, but it was a start. I spent the rest of the day cleaning my apartment. I threw out the old coffee mugs. I organized my textbooks. I washed my graduation gown and hung it in the closet where I could see it every time I opened the door. And when my phone buzzed with a message from Ryan, just a simple, "How are you holding up?" I typed back, better. I think I'm finally better. It wasn't a lie. For the first time in 26 years, I felt like I was standing on solid ground. The next week was a blur of paperwork and phone calls. I signed more documents than I'd signed in my entire life: trust transfer forms, non-disclosure agreements, a formal letter from Claire's lawyer acknowledging her full confession. I didn't see Claire once. She sent everything through her attorney, and I sent everything back through mine. It was clean and clinical and completely devoid of emotion, which was exactly how I wanted it. Ryan called every other day. Not romantic calls, just check-ins. "How are you doing? Did you eat today? I found a donut shop that does maple bacon, thought you might want to try it." I didn't know what to make of him. He was the man who almost became my brother-in-law, and now he was the man who brought me donuts and sat on my floor while I reviewed my residency application. "I think I'm going to take the position at County General," I told him one evening. We were sitting on my balcony, watching the city lights flicker on one by one. "It's not the most prestigious hospital, but it's the one where I'll actually get to help people who need it." Ryan nodded. "That sounds like you." "What's that supposed to mean?" He turned to look at me, and there was something soft in his eyes. "It means you're not doing it for the title. You're doing it because you actually see a re. That's our a re, Elena. Most people in your position would be chasing the fancy residency, the big salary, the corner office. You're chasing patients." I looked away, a little uncomfortable. "I just want to be a good doctor." "You already a re," he said. "You just don't know it yet." I didn't know how to respond to that, so I changed the subject. "Have you heard from Claire?" Ryan's face tightened. "She's been staying with Mom. Grandma kicked her out of the house, said she couldn't look at her. Mom's been trying to get her into therapy, but Claire keeps refusing. She was always stubborn." "This isn't stubborn," Ryan said. "This is something else. She's not just refusing therapy, she's refusing to accept that any of this was her fault. She told her lawyer that you and I conspired against her. That we planned the whole thing to ruin her wedding." I laughed, but it came out hollow. "Of course she did. She's never been wrong about anything in her entire life." "That's not true," Ryan said quietly. "She was wrong about you. She was wrong about me. And she was wrong about the kind of person she could be without consequences." I leaned back in my chair and looked up at the sky. There were no stars, too much city light, but I could see the faint outline of clouds passing overhead. "I don't want to hate her," I said. "I've spent so long trying not to hate her. But every time I think about what she did, the records, the fraud, the way she tried to destroy my career, I feel this cold thing in my chest. And I don't know if it's ever going to go away." Ryan was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "It doesn't have to go away. You just have to make sure it doesn't turn into the thing that defines you." I looked at him. "When did you get so wise?" He smiled. "About 3 seconds after my almost wife tried to rob my family blind." I laughed, a real laugh, the first one in days. "Fair enough." The next afternoon, I got a call from my grandmother. She asked me to come to her house for tea. I almost said no. I was tired, I had paperwork to finish, I hadn't slept well in weeks. But something in her voice made me agree. Grandma's house was a small Victorian on the outskirts of town, surrounded by overgrown rose bushes and a white picket fence that had seen better decades. She met me at the door in her gardenia apron, her silver hair pinned up in a loose bun, her eyes sharp and clear despite her age. Come in," she said, waving me inside. I made scones. They're probably terrible, but I tried. I followed her into the kitchen, where the smell of butter and suga are hung in the air. She poured me a cup of tea and pushed a plate of scones toward me, then sat down across the table with her own cup. You look better, she said. Less haunted. I feel better, I admitted. Still tired. But better. Good. She took a sip of her tea. I called you here because I want to show you something. She stood up and walked to a wooden cabinet in the corner of the kitchen. She opened it and pulled out a small leather-bound book, the edges worn soft with age. She brought it back to the table and set it in front of me. What is this? I asked. Your great-grandmother's journal, she said. She wrote it during the war. Not the big war, the small one. The one nobody talks about. She was a nurse on the front lines, and she kept this journal to remember the people she helped. I opened the first page. The handwriting was delicate and precise, the ink faded to a brownish hue. I read a few lines. May 14th, treated a young soldier today. He was SCA red, but he didn't cry. I held his hand while the doctor worked. He reminded me of my brother. She was never famous, Grandma said. She never made a lot of money. She never had a corner office or a big title. But she saved lives. Dozens of them. And when she died, the people she helped came to her funeral. They brought flowers and stories. They remembered her name. I looked up from the journal. Why are you showing me this? Grandma reached across the table and took my hand. Because I want you to know that there's more than one way to be successful. Claire chased the money and the status and the attention. And look where it got her. You chased something real. You chased the work itself. And that's why you're going to be fine, Elena. You already have what Claire was looking for. I felt my throat tighten. I don't know if I'm that strong. You are, she said. I've watched you for 26 years. You're the strongest person I know. And I'm not just saying that because you're my favorite granddaughter. I laughed through the tears that were suddenly pressing behind my eyes. I'm your only granddaughter, Grandma. Doesn't make it less true. I stayed at Grandma's for 2 hours. We ate scones and talked about her garden and the neighbor's cat that kept eating her petunias. We didn't talk about Claire or the trust or the wedding. We just talked like normal people. Like family. When I left, I took the journal with me. Grandma insisted. It'll remind you, she said, that the work you do matters. Not because of what other people think. Because of what you actually accomplish. I drove home with the journal on the passenger seat, and for the first time in weeks, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Later that night, I got a call from an unknown number. I almost let it go to voicemail, but something made me pick up. Elena, the voice was thin and shaky. Claire's voice. Claire, please don't hang up. She sounded like she'd been crying for hours. I know you don't want to talk to me. I know I don't deserve to talk to you. But I need to say something. I leaned against my kitchen counter and closed my eyes. Say it. I'm sorry. Her voice broke on the last word. I'm really sorry. Not because I got caught. Not because I lost everything. Because I hurt you. I spent my whole life trying to be better than you, and I didn't realize until now that I was never going to be better because I was too busy being worse. I didn't say anything. You were always the good one, Elena. The one who actually worked for things. The one who never needed to tear anyone down to feel tall. And I hated you for it. But I also needed you to keep being that person. Because if you weren't, then what was I supposed to do? What was I supposed to be? Claire, I said, you need to get help. Real help. Not from Mom, not from a lawyer. From someone who actually knows how to fix what's broken inside you. She was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, I know. I'm going to. I already made an appointment. Good. Elena, what? I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't even expect you to talk to me again. I wanted you to know that I see it now. I see what I did. And I'm sorry. I stood there in my kitchen, holding the phone, my chest tight and my eyes burning. Part of me wanted to scream at her. Part of me wanted to hang up and pretend I'd never heard her voice. But another part, a small, quiet part, just wanted to let go. I hear you, I said. And I appreciate you saying it. Thank you. Her voice was really a whisper. Thank you for not hanging up. I didn't say anything else. I just waited until she hung up, and then I set the phone down on the counter and read at it for a long time that I didn't forgive her. Not yet. Maybe not ever. But for the first time, I didn't feel that cold thing in my chest when I thought about her. I just felt tired. And a little bit lighter. 3 months later, I stood in the lobby of County General Hospital in my new white coat, my name embroidered over the left pocket in clean blue letters, Drive E.H. Airdley. The coat was stiff and smelled like industrial detergent, and I'd already spilled coffee on the sleeve during orientation, but I didn't see I'd made it. I was actually a doctor. The residency program was brutal. 12-hour shifts, endless charooting, patients who screamed and patients who cried and patients who looked at me like I was the last person on EARTH they wanted to see. But every time I walked into a room and saw someone's face relax just a little because I was there, I remembered what Grandma had said about Great-Grandma's journal. The work mattered. Not because anyone was watching. Because I was doing it. Ryan came to visit me on my first day off. He brought coffee, real coffee, not the vending machine sludge, and we sat in the hospital cafeteria, watching the chaos swirl around us. You look different, he said. Good different. I feel different. I wrapped my hands around the WRM cup. I feel like I'm actually where I'm supposed to be. He smiled, and there was something WRM in it. Not romantic. Not Aquay Road. Just WRM, I'm glad. You deserve this, Elena. What about you? How's the real estate business? Ryan shrugged. It's fine. I sold the Vinier Road. Couldn't look at it without thinking about the wedding. I winced. I'm sorry. Don't be. It was just a property. The memories were the problem, not the building. We sat in comfortable silence for a while. Then Ryan said, Claire checked into a treatment facility last week. A good one. Mom told me. I looked down at my coffee. He wrote. Grandma told me too. Are you going to visit her? I thought about it. Thought about Claire's voice on the phone, thin and shaking. Thought about the journal on my nightstand and the white coat on my shoulders and the long, winding road that had brought me here. Not yet, I said. Maybe one day. But not yet. Ryan nodded. That's fair. Before he left, he handed me an envelope. I was going to wait, but I figured you should have this now. I opened it. Inside was a check, not huge, but significant. And a note, asterisk, for your student loans. Consider it a graduation present from someone who believes in you. Asterisk. I looked up at him, my throat tight. Ryan, I can't accept this. Yes, you can. He stood up and grabbed his jacket. You saved me from marrying a con artist. The least I can do is help you start your CA rear without debt hanging over your head. He walked away before I could argue. I sat there for a long time, holding the check, feeling something shift in my chest. Not the cold thing. Something something that felt a lot like gratitude. The next few weeks were a blur of patience and shifts and sleepless nights. I learned to trust my instincts. I learned to stay calm when everything went wrong. I learned that sometimes the best thing you could do for a patient was just sit with them and hold their hand. And somewhere in the middle of all that, I stopped thinking about Claire. Not completely. She still crept into my thoughts sometimes, especially at night, when the hospital was quiet and I was too tired to keep my walls up. But the thoughts didn't hurt anymore. They just felt like old scars, faded. Faint. Still there, but no longer bleeding. I was walking out of the hospital one evening when I saw her. Claire. She was sitting on a bench near the entrance, her hair shorter than I remembered, her face thinner, her hands folded in her lap like she was waiting for something. I stopped. My heart did that weird lurch it always did when I saw her, but I didn't feel the urge to run. I didn't feel the urge to scream. Galena. She stood up, her voice tentative. I know you didn't expect to see me. I wanted to call first, but I thought you might hang up. I might have, I admitted. She nodded, like she'd expected that. I just got out of the facility. 2 months of therapy, group sessions, the whole thing. I'm not cured, I don't think that's how it works. But I wanted to see you. To tell you something. I crossed my arms, tell me. I understand now. Her voice was steady, calmer than I'd ever heard it. I understand what I did to you. Not just the trust, not just the records. All of it. The RS of making you feel small. The RS of taking things from you just because I could. I understand now that I was never competing with you. I was competing with myself. With the person I was afraid I was. Claire, let me finish. She held up her hand. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm not even asking to be in your life. I just wanted to say that I'm not going to be that person anymore. I'm going to get a real job. I'm going to pay back every cent I took from the trust. And I'm going to spend the rest of my life trying to be someone who deserves to have a sister like you. I looked at her. She looked different. Not just thinner and shorter haired, but different in her eyes. They were clear, rare. Less guaride. Like she'd stopped pretending to be someone she wasn't. That okay, I said. She blinked. Okay, I believe you. I don't forgive you, not yet. But I believe you're trying. A tear rolled down her cheek. She wiped it away quickly. Thank you. That's more than I deserve. Probably, I agreed, and for the first time in our entire lives, we both laughed. She left after that. She didn't ask to hug me. She didn't ask for my number. She just said goodbye and walked away, and I watched her go, and I didn't feel the cold thing in my chest. I just felt like I'd closed a door I'd been ring around for 26 years. A year later, I was promoted to senior resident. My mother came to the ceremony, my actual ceremony, not Claire's wedding. She sat in the front row with Grandma, and when they called my name, she stood up and clapped so loud I could hear her over the crowd. After we went to dinner. Just the three of us, me, Mom, and Grandma. We talked about everything and nothing. We laughed at Grandma's stories about Great-Grandma's journal. We argued about whether the chicken was overcooked. And when the check came, my mother grabbed it before I could. I'm paying, she said. I've missed too many of your milestones. I'm not missing this one. I let her. That night, I sat in my apartment and looked at the photos from the ceremony. Me in my white coat. Mom and Grandma flanking me. A shot of me holding my certificate, grinning so wide my cheeks hurt that I picked up my phone and scrolled through my contacts. Ryan's name was there. Claire's too. I paused on Claire's name for a long moment, then opened a new message. Asterisk, I'm glad you're doing better. Maybe one day we can have coffee. Asterisk. She replied within seconds. Asterisk, I'd like that. On your schedule. Always on your schedule. Asterisk, I smiled and put down my phone. The last photo in my album was the one I'd taken on graduation day, me in my cap and gown, standing alone on the stage because my family hadn't shown up. I looked at it for a long time. The woman in that photo looked tired. Defeated. Like she'd already given up before she'd even root. I looked at my reflection in the phone screen now. Tired, yes. But not defeated. I had my rear. I had my family, the ones who mattered. I had a future I'd built with my own hands, brick by brick, through 8 years of sleepless nights and endless exams and every single moment I'd refused to give up. And I had something else too. I had myself. I closed the photo and turned off the lights. Tomorrow would bring more patience, more shifts, more chaos. But tonight, I could rest. Tonight, I was exactly where I was supposed to be. And that was enough.